Now that everyone has their caffeine for the morning, I think we'll get the meeting started. So we'll start with a karakia from Councillor Davidson.
Ona he te pō where marama, tō moke te ao whātu tangata, tātai ki runga, tātai ki raro, tātai aho ro, home huie, taiki.
Kia ora, thank you very much. So we move into apologies. We have an apology for the day from Councillor Major and it looks like Councillor Chu as well now, Aidan. Yep. And apologies for early departure from the Mayor and Councillor Goff and McDonald. Any other apologies? I think the meeting shouldn't go on too long. Right, do I have a mover for those? Thanks, Pauline. A seconder? Tim, thank you very much. All in favour?
Aye.
Any against? Carried. Thank you very much. Any declarations of interest for today? No. If they pop up during the day, just please let us know. And confirmation of minutes. We'll do both the open and public excluded. Do I have a mover for those, please? Yep. Mike and Tim seconding. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? No. Thank you very much. Carried. So we start today with public forum. So we have Murray, Sandy and Kitty from Grow Ototahi. So welcome and come and please let us know about the work that you're doing.
Kia ora koutou, ngā mihi nui, he mihi mahana kia koutou, good morning, and thank you for affording us some time to be with you. Today I'm joined by two of my fellow trustees, Kitty Jardine, who'll be known to probably all of you, and Sandy Macro, who doubles as a trustee and our festival director. To Mayor Leanne, good morning. To Chair Sarah, good morning. Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here. And we'd like to provide you with a very brief update on the Grow Ototahi Garden Festival for 2021. Grow had its genesis in the desire of a small group of people to provide for the city an opportunity to combine our rich garden and horticultural heritage with its fast increasing reputation as a global leader in food sustainability, education, resilient communities and a vibrancy and sustainability for the city across the region, and making sure that our citizens live in a prosperous and delightful part of the country. After our unwanted viral visitor met us earlier in the year, we had to cancel the inaugural 2020 event 3 days before it was due to start. So as you can imagine, the large number of volunteers and sponsors and commercial partners, and of course the support from the council, meant that it was a little bit, well, it was full of grief, to be honest, and some of us are only just getting over it now, but what we have done is reschedule it for the 2021 year and the 12th to 14th of March next year. So the support from council, like many other organisations, and a large group of volunteers from schools, from the community gardens and others who gave freely of their time was marvellous, and then mobilising again now for the 2021 event. The City Council support for the 2020 event was gratefully received and with thanks, and included $15,000 from the Events Fund and $30,000 from the Sustainability and Innovation Fund. So on behalf of my fellow trustees here, but our Chair Chris Walsh and our absent trustees Lisa Goodman and Sarah Barra, we thank you for that contribution to our event last year that didn't quite get off the ground. Mayor Leanne was present to launch that event in 2019, and Chair Sarah has been interested in our events and she provided us with the invitation to be here today. Councillor Galloway and a number of others of you have been actively involved in supporting the event too, and for that we say thank you again. So the 2021 inaugural Grow Ototahi Festival event is the first step in a 10-year vision that starts to provide an opportunity for the event to grow organically from its home in the Christchurch Botanic Gardens, to include and activate other city assets and infrastructure during the days that it's running. So the intent is that over time it will move down Worcester Boulevard into the Arts Centre, into the Art Gallery, across the bridge and around the river, out to Riverside and all the way around through past the Town Hall into the Margaret Mayhew Playground. And the importance of Otakaro, the Avon River, can't be understated here in terms of what the Trust is seeking to achieve around sustainability, use of water, mahinga kai, and ensuring that the stories that are rich in the Christchurch's history are taught and embedded as part of what Grow Otatahi professes to achieve for the city. Bringing 25,000 people into the central city initially over the first 3 days, and then organically evolving the event across the city to include between 45 and 50,000 visitors is going to be an important part to make sure that we have a connected and integrated city with the thematic horticultural and garden links between its public assets, its infrastructure and its communities. The development of a living residential biosphere that will spark international and national interest beyond 2021 and linked with the proposed Earth Precinct and the creation of education pathways from school through to tertiary studies, science and research and food sustainability careers are also at the heart of Grow. Any profits that the festival makes will be applied to scholarships for students and apprentices in the horticultural field, so the Trust is looking forward to supporting the further development and growth of the city's reputation in that space. So the 2021 festival, while it's confirmed for the 12th and 14th of March next year, and has been incredibly well supported by Lincoln University as a presenting partner who's come on board for the next 3 years, and other organisations like Environment Canterbury, the City Council, CCL and the Epic Innovation Centre, mean that we have the abilities to recast the event for 2021. We're currently receiving support again from the Christchurch City Council, for which we're grateful, $20,000 from the Events Fund and $5,000 from Strengthening Communities. We're also awaiting the confirmation of funding from other sources, and there are a number of other applications that are going to be confirmed by December this year. So once we have that clarity, we'll be making sure that we make the appropriate decision around size and scale for the event for 2021. So our chefs and our designers, our commercial partners, our community garden supporters, our beautiful botanic gardens, the school children around the city who are involved in designing their own gardens, our volunteers and supporters are all working hard to present the city with a festival that has a modern take on our gardening and horticultural heritage. So our central city is something that's to be fed by its citizens and nurtured by its leaders. And that's really where we are taking this event over the next 5 to 10 years. And as we continue to re-establish ourselves, those of us that have made a personal financial contribution and a time commitment to this event look forward to making a positive contribution to our home, Otatahi Christchurch. Thank you for listening. We're happy to take any questions.
Kia ora, thank you. I think there's probably time for one or two very quick questions. Yanni.
Thank you. Thanks for what you're doing. I was just interested in the school participation and if you had any strategy to get schools in the eastern part of the city or in lower socioeconomic areas participating.
We have room for 8 schools to have exhibition gardens. We've got Banks Ave School, they were involved last year, or this year, and will also be involved for 2021. I'm just trying to think, we've sent a letter out to a lot of the schools, including those in the east, to involve them. But I think Banks Ave is the only one that's secured at the moment.
Thank you. Any other questions? Pauline.
Just a suggestion there, Keep Christchurch Beautiful has got quite strong links in with the schools through their schools environmental enhancement program, so they probably give you a steer on the really active schools with the gardens.
Yeah.
Just an idea.
So we had 8 signed up last year, and of course the kids were all bitterly disappointed.
Yeah.
We even had one of them that finished their garden and others that finish them at school. And the intention is that over time, as the festival grows, there'll be more than 8 schools participating right across the festival.
Fantastic. Yep.
That's great. Thank you so much for coming and updating us today. We're really looking forward to March next year.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thanks,
Have a good morning.
Right, we have no deputations by appointment today, no presentation of petitions, and we're going to move, firstly we're going to change the order of the agenda and we're going to move to item 13, which is on the Tsunami warning sirens technical standards non-compliance. So, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Morning.
If you'd like to give us the sort of highlights of the report and why it's here today, and an overview of what's coming, that would be really helpful, and then time for a couple of questions.
Yeah, sure. Hopefully you had time to read some of the accompanying documents to give you a bit more, but I can run through a brief summary. Between 2012 and 2014, Council installed an array of sirens across our coastline. We have 45 electronic sirens installed along the coastline. In July 2014, after that installation, the Ministry of Civil Defence Emergency Management at the time implemented a tsunami warning siren standard. And that technical standard essentially now puts us into a position where we may be non-compliant come the extended deadline on the 31st of March 2021. Essentially, we are non-compliant on two fronts. One is the signal, which is the noise and the tone that the sirens make, and the other non-compliant issue is the messaging, the actions that we require of citizens when they hear those sirens activating. Essentially, that's the crux of me coming today to try to update the committee on where we're currently at. And there's an array of actions that are currently in place. We maintain our sirens. They are regularly tested. There's no risk to life in the change of the siren tones. So everything that we have in place currently, I think, is a suitable system for alerting, or part of alerting, our citizens in the event of a tsunami. I suppose one of the other key actions is that we are developing a report to Council. The Council will be able to make an array of decisions about the strategic long-term arrangements for our sirens, and also whether to upgrade these to meet the current technical standards. And that's pretty much the summary. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Leanne.
Just, sorry, I've kind of made a note saying that we may become non-compliant in July 2021, but the report in front of us refers to us already being non-compliant, the deadline having expired on the 30th of June. So was it extended, and who extended it, and when was this notified to us?
So the original deadline was in June 2020, so yes, we have passed that. We was extended to the 31st of March by the director of NEMA, so NEMA a replacement for McDem. That was extended by Sarah Stewart-Black in one of the letters, I believe, was accompanying the report.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
No,
Okay, so we've got time. One of the issues for me is the proper debate about the tsunami warning, and perhaps getting an update on the review that we did after the Hurunui Kaikoura earthquake, and the significant issues that were raised by our own residents in respect of that in the report that was undertaken at the time. So I think that just in discussions with the chair of the committee, that holding a workshop with councillors is actually a relatively important and first step to the development of a report to council, because it may be that we will want to look at a much more significant decision, which is whether the tsunami sirens are of themselves a modern day response to the challenges that we have. I mean, it seems to me that sirens are, well, particularly those that only make noise, which is pretty ridiculous in this day and age, and I don't know why we were doing that in 2012. But essentially, we need to be in a position where people are really clear about what happens when they feel something that is a significant shape, because sirens are too late for a close tsunami and too soon for a distant one.
Yeah, absolutely. And our education and the messaging at the moment is very much around that. The sirens are not there for a local tsunami. That's the events.
But it was used for a local tsunami in the...
Yeah, and I think that some of that definitely feeds into the report and the decision that you may wish to make around about that in the future. So yes, that's very, very relevant. But the messaging now that we communicate, particularly with the change in evacuation zones, we're refreshing our messaging. So we are only non-compliant, or will be non-compliant, on the one noise issue. And as you say, it's obviously part of a bigger piece of work.
Yeah. But I think we should have a more in-depth conversation about whether we want to go down that track, or whether there are other tracks that would be preferable. I still don't want to recapture that moment of, people basically trapped in their cars on the Bridge Street Bridge, only able to go in one direction. It was, there's a lot to be done.
So we've got a resolution up now about having a workshop on tsunami warning options.
So,
And
but
that will
I would
help
like
inform-
because I had missed this completely.
Yeah.
I would like us to note that that there has been an extension to the deadline to the, what is it, the 30th of March?
31st of March.
31st of March 2021, because that gives us a time frame.
It does.
And that it's essentially yeah.
So, the
It's
key
not just,
question is-
it's almost as if an update on the, you know, the what happened after we did the review of the
Yeah.
of what happened in 2016, was it?
I think that one of the things that we will have to do is ahead of the workshop, that we will have to make sure that we've had a conversation about what the workshop needs to cover, and making sure that all the right information comes to councillors ahead of that, so that we've had the reading and things ahead of time, so that we can have a really good discussion on the day.
Yeah, I just want to, what I don't want to lose sight of is the fact that we received, you know, quite a significant review of what happened,
Yeah.
and there were a number of recommendations. So it's almost as if it's time to just make sure that we're on track to deliver those recommendations, and so that absolutely ties in with our consideration of the tsunami warning options.
It does. Tim?
I'm just wondering about the wording about workshop. I mean, I'm not an expert in tsunami warning systems. I'm certainly not that knowledgeable on processes with regards to evacuation procedures and standards. So I think, for me personally, wouldn't it be better to have staff get that information and maybe a look at what happened with regards to Bridge
Yep.
Street, have all that in place and have a briefing to councillors, because I see no point in us having a workshop when you're going to get 16 opinions or 17 opinions.
So the intent of the workshop is to make sure that we're well informed before we give any guidance or look at the actual options themselves.
Yeah.
So
So
we'll be
what's the
getting
wording with the difference between a workshop, which I think, I don't know, I mean, it's just maybe...
a workshop will come with information. Yeah. So we will make sure, and I will send an email out well ahead of time to people, so that we can make sure that the workshop and any briefing materials are all fit for purpose, so that we can do what we need to do on the day.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? No? Yanni?
So, just trying to understand, we've got updated tsunami signs that came out, I think, in 2017 or 18. So there's no more work happening around tsunami risk zones. They're all sort of current. Is that correct?
No, the tsunami evacuation zones are being revised across the city. Christchurch cities were revised in December last year, and Banks Peninsulas are currently under review. So there was an original report to council going on some of the details that Leanne mentioned around the history of why we have sirens in the community, feelings towards those. But before that report could come to council, we needed to update our evacuation zones. That would then in turn allow us to determine if the sirens themselves were located in the right areas and allow council to make a decision on that. So there is a flow to all of these things that are happening. And the zones are currently still under review.
What was the work we did in 2018 with communities?
2018, I'd have to
So
go back and look at that. I'm not.
So we're getting more into the workshop kind of materials at the moment. So at the moment, this report is simply noting the non-compliance, and that we've got a time frame, a workshop coming up, and a new report looking at that coming up. So any additional information for the workshop, we'll make sure that we get that for people, and for the options. So, but at the moment, this is just noting the technical non-compliance and looking at a way forward.
Right, but in 2017 in November, we had a campaign, Long, Strong, Get Gone.
That's right, and that's not about the technical non-compliance of these particular
No, it was
tsunami.
encouraging residents to familiarise themselves with evacuation zones and procedures. All I was trying to understand is there a new set of evacuation zones that we're currently looking at, and we're waiting for that information so we kind of know
What we've just been told,
And I
yeah.
think
to do.
Rob's just answered that for
Yeah.
you.
It's what we've just been
Which
told.
is yes, is it?
Yes, for the zones, yep. I believe you may be referring to 2017 may have been a national campaign around earthquake, Long, Strong, Get Gone message.
Yeah.
It's something that we keep pushing as well.
Yeah. Right. Do I have a mover for this report, please? Pauline, seconder. Jimmy? Any debate? No. In that case, I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Declare that carried. Thank you very much. Aaron? Sorry, Aaron? You need to vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, no, I had a question, but no.
Okay, so you need probably to email through questions if you're not seen.
Oh, does that raise hand they're not with?
Okay, so we'll have Mary looking out for you on the screen, but I'm generally looking at the room and you're tiny on the screen. Yeah. If anyone else sees Aaron waving on the screen? Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay, so we'll move on then. So we'll move back to the review of the freedom camping bylaw. Welcome, thanks for coming in today. It doesn't seem very long since we've talked about the freedom camping bylaw, but it is time to do it again. So if you could give us a brief overview of exactly why we're having to do this now and what the next steps are, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure. So why we're reviewing this bylaw now, it's because the Freedom Camping Act requires councils to review bylaws within the first 5 years of them being made, and for this bylaw that's the 26th of November. We've amended the bylaw twice before, in 2016 and 2018, but neither of those counts as a review under the Act. The Freedom Camping Act sets out the process for reviewing a bylaw, and we can do that process in 2 stages, which is necessary in this case because of delays for COVID, because we would have been going up for consultation sort of during lockdown, which wouldn't have been appropriate. So the review process requires the council to make a series of determinations which are reflected in the recommendations in the report. This report is largely procedural. It confirms that we still need a bylaw, and it completes the first stage of the review process. We'll see how things go over the summer and come back to the committee in March or April with a report proposing consultation, noting that we have to go out for consultation whether we propose changes or not. That's set out in the legislation. COVID will continue to impact on international travel and tourism, which will change freedom camping pressures this summer. We'll use the next few months to understand whether these changes impact on how we regulate freedom camping. This isn't about removing regulation that we have at the moment or areas. This is about assessing areas that were emerging at the height of the tourism before COVID and seeing whether we still need to make changes to the bylaw or not to reflect those areas. And of course, one of these areas is North Beach, which has got a temporary closure in place at the moment using the chief executive power in the bylaw.
Thank you very much. And there has been some concerns raised about the use of data from the coming summer when there isn't a huge amount of international tourism, for example, to base any future decisions on with the bylaw. We'll also be using data from previous summers and emerging stuff. Could you talk to me about how that would work?
We have a monitoring program that will be going over the summer, so that will help feed into the information, the report that's coming back to you. When we do a bylaw review, we look at every single area in the bylaw, so we'll always look at those anyway, and we'll use the data on complaints and other information from the 5 years that the bylaw's been in place, and weave that in with some information from this current summer and come back with recommendations, which will then go out for consultation.
That's great. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, because I mean, as the chair said, this year's going to be, or this summer's going to be skewed without question. I guess one thing that perhaps might be of assistance is if there, we could have the trends of tourism for the last 5 years from CNZ, because logic would say that if tourism was going up, then the issue would be going up, because I don't think there's, I mean, it's a good time if it's not busy to look at, say, the infrastructure that's required, because there's little pressure on it. But yeah, I think it's going to be skewed. But
I think that's a good idea. We'll make sure that we've got the data in there that covers the relative amounts of tourism over those 6 years. Yeah, Andrew.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. The first of which relates to the North Beach situation. A person might think that a reason for doing this sooner rather than later would be to resolve the North Beach situation by way of changes to the bylaw. Obviously, the other way of doing that would be to consider extending the power that the chief executive has already exercised to determine that that area not be used for freedom camping in the short term. How would we, first of all, can we do that? And secondly, how would we go about doing that? I'm just keen to know that there isn't a risk inherent in doing this later rather than sooner that relates to that North Beach situation.
So we put the Chief Executive used her power to put in a temporary closure on the 27th of February. So we only had 3 weekends before we were in full lockdown, so we haven't had much of a chance to assess how that worked. We put that closure in place at weekends during the surf life-saving season because that's when that car park is very busy and when there was a lot of competition for car parking, which was the issue there around public access. That comes in again this weekend, so it runs from Labour weekend until the end of the year, so that's when the surf life-saving season starts. So what we will do in the meantime, we had put that in place until the end of the year because we had intended to have the entire bylaw process finished before then, but because of COVID that hasn't been possible. So we will be looking at what happens there over the next few weeks and we'll make a decision probably at the beginning of December about whether we recommend that the Chief Executive continue that temporary closure until the bylaw review process is complete. We can do that by looking, we've got monitoring beginning this weekend and enforcement activity, and we will also seek feedback from the community board in the area to see what the sort of feel from the community is there, to see whether that needs to be extended. There is a chance that some of the issues and pressures have reduced because of the lack of international tourists, but we won't know until we've had a few weeks of that closure being in place.
Great, thank you. Andrew,
Thank you.
Another one?
Yeah, just on the monitoring information from over the summer this year, and I mean, obviously any hearings panel dealing with the bylaw review would decide what weight to give to that versus what weight to give to what's happened in more normal previous seasons with international visitors. But I'm guessing that that monitoring information may support arguments for further restrictions based on domestic use, rather than removing restrictions that were put there in more normal seasons. Would you envisage that the sort of monitoring you're doing might play into that space?
I think we're taking a wait-and-see approach in terms of what information we get, where it's a bit unpredictable what's going to be happening in terms of whether we see a big increase in domestic travellers or people are doing less. I mean, there are reports at the moment of camper van sales, increasing, so we may see different pressures, they may be in different places. So that's one of the advantages of waiting a little while for the second report to come back, is that we get to see what happens and see if any of those areas that we've got on our radar as emerging areas do justify recommending further regulation.
Yeah, and of course that can be taken in context, which really relates to the point that Tim made a few minutes ago. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any further questions? Thanks, James.
Kia ora. Just in addition to what the Deputy Mayor has raised, and with your response on what the plan is going forward, I can say now that obviously there are not many, if any, foreign tourists around. There are a hell of a lot of domestics, and they're not in the flash RVs that we're talking about that people are buying. So it remains an issue. Interestingly,
James?
enough,
I know that you're saying interestingly. That sounds like a conversation or debate rather than a question.
Did you know that, interestingly, this is relevant to what you're doing going forward, which is that the car park is not being used much, because I think most people think that temporary closure is still in place, but it's being used just further along because there are toilets further along. So can you just bear that in mind as you look at your monitoring?
Absolutely. One of the things we were hoping to achieve by putting that temporary closure in place is to see whether that was effective at addressing the issues or whether it caused new unpredictable issues elsewhere, like displacement.
Yeah.
So that is absolutely something that we'll be looking at, and
the
monitoring extends along the Marine Parade area.
And thanks for mentioning the community board too.
James, would you like to move the paper?
I'll move the...
Yep.
Yes, I'll move.
Excellent. A seconder? Andrew? Okay, any debate? No, I'll put that then. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Declare that carried. Thank you very much. Okay, now move to item 8 and then 9 on the art trail along the Avon River precinct. So, Russell and Andrew. There will be plenty of questions. Right, so Could you please start with a bit of background on these, generally on the placement, the River Art Trail, and then I think Brent's going to talk to us about the maintenance as well. So sort of overview of those things before we move into the individual two papers.
Sure. So two things, one about the art trail and one about where the funding for this came from. The art trail was conceived by Sarah way back and never actually grew legs because it was going to require significant philanthropic funding. So they did the work, they identified places, the idea is still there, and some of it has been fulfilled through literary works, and there's existing artworks and bits and pieces along the way. The particular place that's been identified for the pool artwork was a site on the original Art by the River trail for a relocated artwork. The funding that Otakaro transferred to council last year, or might have been the year before, $200,000, was to fund two of the pieces. The first of the pieces went through a selection committee, a part of which Kerry Jardine, our arts advisor, was part of, and the second is a commission piece. This particular piece, you may remember, was part of a temporary scape exhibition that sat across the road by the Hereford Street Bridge there for quite a few months. A couple of things that have happened just in general since this was originally drafted is around in general future maintenance of artworks, and this came from a report to council probably 2 years ago where you asked that we have a look at how we provided for and looked after our artwork, because we're currently using contractors to do the work. You're aware that there's a significant amount of work has been brought back in-house through Andrew's team to not only control costs but also to improve the quality of the work that we're doing. So Andrew might like to talk about those initiatives.
Yeah, sure. So a position has been created that's been vacant for about 12 months, and the reason for that is we've been negotiating with the Ministry of Culture and Heritage over the maintenance for the Earthquake Memorial Wall. That is now concluded. So we're now in a position to recruit that role where funding's been contributed by the Crown annually to support that. The difference between a contract delivered model and what Council have asked us to go to internal is we can target the response. So instead of having a scheduled price for every element per annum and whether it needs the work or not, typically we'll be paying it with our internal resource supported by our other ranges. We'll be able to target the maintenance where it's needed. So we're going to get a lot of efficiencies, cost efficiencies out of that. So we're ready to go with that now. So
I guess the key question from that is, as we're being asked to add additional pieces, you don't believe that additional budget will be needed at this stage?
I'll just get Russell. He's got some updated numbers actually. I believe you got some numbers from Scape. So the numbers in the report are not quite correct.
So with Natalie's guys, the pool, in the report we mentioned $7,000. After talking to Escape, they have actually come back and they recommend $2,000 per annum.
That's quite a difference.
So I guess my approach to this is now that we know that we're going to definitely in-house the maintenance, as we've now we can pretty quickly do a full assessment of what the true needs will be. So consideration of change in the annual plan may mean no change, but we need to do that work, and it's not going to be a difficult process.
And that information will come back to us as part of the LTP discussions.
Correct.
Great. Pauline, then James, then Tim, then Jimmy. Okay, James Goff.
Yep, thanks. Do we insure it, or does someone else?
All the artworks are insured.
And we hold the insurance.
Yep.
With that, and the other one's really been answered around OPEX, so more current estimate than around 2,000 instead of the 7,000. Yes,
cool. And the actual value of it, early indications were it was around $45,000. That was the value of the artwork, but the closer figures are 88,000.
Okay, thanks. And last one, it was displayed obviously near the Hereford corner. Any history or problems with people sort of climbing it and everything? It's 3 metres high. I certainly couldn't reach it, but I don't know if others would.
No, I don't think I would either. No, in fact, they've done some extra work to the engineering of it and raised the plinth a bit just to make sure.
Okay, so I guess what I'm saying is not likely. It's not likely to be a vandalism target or.
We didn't experience any during the.
Okay, thank you.
That's good. Tim?
Just to clarify, I read in the report that it's actually going to be opposite, or the proposed site's opposite the Antigua boat sheds, not Hereford Street.
Yeah, no, you were listening to me.
It
I was saying in 2019 they had it displayed at the Hereford corner, so I just wanted to see how it performed then.
And just the site opposite the boat sheds, that came about. The original proposal was actually to put it on the same side of the river from the boat sheds, but we asked Scape to go and talk to the businesses and the housing around that area, and the boat shed said, look, they didn't mind it, but not on that side of the river. So then we re-looked at the out by the river plan and saw that there was a spot already designated over there.
I notice under issues, one of a water supply. So is that just going to be like a water blast, or because I mean,
just a wash down.
Yep.
And if we don't have that, we have mobile tanks.
Yep. Yeah, I was just thinking because it says here water supply is required, but that would be putting in a pipe, and that's ridiculous. So thank you. I guess. No, I'll leave it for the debate. Thank you.
Thanks. Jimmy?
Thank you, Chair. Regarding to the staff, the recommendation paragraph 2, those conditions, consents, and also to provide some of the information. This one, when will be ready? What's the time frame for those conditions?
Once approved goes ahead, they'll have to apply for the consent to go in. So I don't know the time frame on that. No.
Okay, but it's after all this has been confirmed.
It can't go in without those being satisfied.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we'll move to the specific papers then. So number 8 is Natalie guides the pool. Do we have any last specific questions on that one? No, in that case, do I have a mover for the paper? Sam and Pauline second. Any debate? Tim?
Thank you. Look, I know that artwork is meant to, or some public art and art in general is sometimes meant to challenge us and raise questions and along those lines. But I guess 2 things for me is, one is negotiation with the artist with regards to copyright. I can totally understand wanting them to protect with regards to having the right to not copy or whatever, but we've got some examples where it's actually cost quite a bit to repair, etc., and when we can touch, when we can't, etc. The artworks have been bought for the city, therefore I think there should be some more movement and less preciousness, I think. So if they're going to sell it to the city, then they should be actually open to that, and I don't see this in any of the artworks really that we deal with, so I'm really disappointed with that. And it's not a stab at council staff at all. It's really, I think artists have to open themselves up a wee bit more, so I'd like to see that. I just don't see, maybe, I mean, I'm no art expert, but I think this is just a step too far. I don't see its relevance to this site and to this area, so I'll be saying no to this.
Thank you. Hang on. Melanie?
I feel a little bit like Tim. I find the location a bit odd. I mean, I used to have lunch there, as it mentions in the report, and I'd find it quite weird to sit next to that object. So I'm going to support all of it apart from part 2.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in debate? Yanni?
I concur with what's been said, and also I think for me, like, we really need to think about the challenges that are facing us around our own maintenance. There's parts of the city along rivers where we can't even do the basic maintenance, and yet here we are adding an additional maintenance cost for something in terms of this location that just seems very unnecessary. There's a beautiful riverbank here. There's been 100 million spent on the river promenade through the central city. I can't justify us taking this artwork and putting it here and I can't justify the ongoing cost in terms of maintenance when we've got other things that are struggling to get maintained properly, like park benches in our communities, or roads or parks. So appreciate the work. I also think we need to have a conversation at some point around using local artists. I know in the kind of report it does mention that there were artists that were looked at across Christchurch and New Zealand. I would have thought we should have, especially with our new arts policy, be focusing much more on local artists rather than artists in other parts of New Zealand. So I won't support this today.
Thanks, Yanni. We have Pauline, then Sam, then Anne.
No, if art is not controversial, in my view, it's not really art, and I think the conversation we're having today is just proving that. I think this is fantastic. I really think it's great that the OPEX cost has come right down to a more real figure, and I think we can look at ways that we can even get those down lower. And I do have confidence in Scape. They do a good job in our city. Our city is becoming a really strong art city, and bring it on, in my view. So I think they've put a lot of work into deciding the location. I think it'll be great there to look out over across from the boat sheds and see that. So I'm really supporting this today.
Thank you. Sam?
Yeah, look, I'm surprised we're even debating this. Let's be very clear, we're accepting a gift on behalf of the city with minimal maintenance costs. We need to be positive and look at how we proactively rebuild the city, and this is a really good step. So I'm quite frustrated that we're even spending time as a city debating it. We're accepting a positive gift that will add value, and we should embrace it.
Thank you. Anne?
Wonderfully said, Sam. Thank you. And exactly what I was going to say. We spend an enormous amount of time and money thinking about concrete, roads, whatever. This is about our soul as a city, and art is about feeding that soul. Art has to be controversial. That's what it's meant to be. It's meant to cause debate and discussion, and we'll never agree about whether something is a good art or not, or whether it should be in this place or not. That's not the point. The point is that we need to feed the soul of our city, and this is one way to do it, and it's a wonderful gift, and we should be very grateful. So, thanks.
Andrew?
Thank you. Just very, very briefly, I agree that a workshop on our arrangements and our approach to public art would be a good idea. Each of our individual responses to a piece of art is subjective, and that's exactly the way that it's meant to be. One of the features of public art, or one of the attributes, is that it provokes discussion. Well, that's exactly what's happened here this morning. But if we want our city to be an interesting place and to have features that are points of interest and points of conversation and develop the footfall that we so often talk about, particularly in the central city, then what we're talking about here is aligned with that. This is a gift. The maintenance costs are both minimal and minimised, and I'm really pleased to support this today.
Thank you. James?
I'll keep it pretty quick. Look, this is being gifted. The OPEX is only $2,000. We've spent more than the annual OPEX probably just having this debate right now than live streaming it. So let's put it into perspective. Enjoy it or not, that's your prerogative, but I'll be supporting it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Jimmy?
Aaron's waving his hand.
Oh, yep. Jimmy, then Aaron.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I support this one. I just want to remind the Mayor and Council, if we review our community outcome, particularly under the resilient community, we celebrate our identity through the arts. Arts the first, culture, heritage, sport, and recreation. So it's core value of city, particularly the central city. After the most attack, and also after pandemic, now we need to vitalize economy. Also this for well-being. So regarding the maintenance, etc. Probably if we review the paragraph 2, but still it's a kind of the set up similar conditions there. So today we approve. Just we like to vitalize the city. Yes. So I fully support.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, like's been said, art is meant to inspire and confront and all of those other things. Obviously, this one here, I know it's called pool, but it's a diving board. People are going to turn up and have a look at it and go, wow, the river's moved over the years. And the other thing, if it was, I think it should be placed outside Treasury, and we'll call it off the deep end.
Thanks, Aaron. James?
somewhere back in the 80s, I was on a high-profile radio station here in Christchurch, and I was outraged at the council buying a Colin McCann painting called "As There Is a Curious Flow of Light," right? So I've conducted this public outrage, and then I grew up.
Did you?
And so I'm supporting this today, notwithstanding the fact that the river has moved, as Councillor Kewen has noted, and notwithstanding that it's too shallow to have a diving board there anyway. But no, I think it is great that we have art that provokes and encourages discussion. That's what this is, as we've seen this morning. Kia ora.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so 30 seconds from me. Public art is essential for a city. When you look at the way that art is often perceived as being something exclusive and expensive, public art like this, and whatever you think of the piece itself, allows art to be accessible for everyone, for every resident in the city. You only have to walk past, there's no charge, you don't need to own it yourself. And I think that enriches the city right across all of the demographics. And I think that's really, really important. To me, this particular piece speaks to the lack of swimmability in our rivers. And the fact that they are of really poor quality and they're not currently our pool. And that will be what I am reminded of when I walk past it. And with that, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay. Okay, so Yanni and Tim against the whole thing, and Melanie recorded against number 2. And with that, I declare it carried. Thank you very much. And we move to paper number 9, which is Raise the Anchor. Which, may have the same debate.
Happy to move.
I'll second.
Okay, so Leanne and Pauline. Are there any further questions on this particular piece of art and its positioning?
It's already there.
This one is already in place. Any further questions? No. Is there any debate?
Yeah.
Leanne and then Aaron.
It's just really to flow on from the other comments. When this was first displayed, it was displayed in another place, and I was really moved by it. It's an exceptional reference to a point in time which is very meaningful for our city. I questioned it being placed where it is at the moment, but when I heard the history of that site and the significance, I think it's absolutely the right place, and I just wanted to speak in this part of the debate to acknowledge Scape and to thank them, and also for Ngāi Tuhuriri for the incredible sense of generosity, and to acknowledge Nathan Pohio, which does reflect the point that has been made by others about supporting local artists. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron?
Yeah, like Leanne, I totally agree. There's a lot of story behind this, but I remember the first time seeing it at this location, and I was driving around the park, not knowing it was going there actually, and then suddenly stopping, going back, and having a good look at it, and just thinking to myself, flippin' heck, that is amazing. Everything about it, that art, the placement, the inspiration it gives you, and wow, did it blow my mind. And I just thought, this is one of the coolest little pieces of art anywhere in the world, and what an experience. So, and I actually had a little tear in my eye. It was so good. I was just blown away. So that's what art can do.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any further debate?
Yes.
Anne.
Yep. Thank you. I just wanted to read a quote from Toni Morrison, the author. She says, this is, in terms of the context of our time at the moment, this is precisely the time when artists go to work. There is no time for despair and place for self-pity, no need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language. That is how civilizations heal. So at the moment, we need art, and it's wonderful that we are having these wonderful things gifted to us. I think Nathan's work, this one, particularly grounds us with the ancestors and with the place, and is a remarkable testament to what our city's doing in terms of partnership and working together with mana whenua, and it's very powerful, so very supportive.
Thank you. And with that, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? No. Okay, I'll declare that carried. Thank you very much. Right, we move now to the Community Organisation Loan Scheme applications. Welcome, Sam and Gary. So we have two of these today. We'll take them one, then the other. Okay, so if you could briefly take us through firstly the Netzel one, that would be great.
Sure, so kia ora koutou. To just introduce, I guess, the loan scheme as a reminder, it's been in play for many years, longer than I'm able to look up and actually see, but I know as far as back as 2007, but probably earlier. The fund that's kind of earmarked as available sits at around 3.1 million. And that slowly grows as groups repay with their interest over time. Currently loaned out is about 1 million of that. Now this is a rates neutral scheme where the cost of borrowing is covered by the borrowers, and its purpose is for community not-for-profit organisations to improve or develop facilities and other major projects which may be in a unique situation, for example, not owning the land that they're on, and therefore typical financing isn't available. So.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Initially, any questions on the loan scheme itself generally? None of those? Okay. So Melanie on the Netzel. You go. Yeah.
Yeah, what I'm struggling to understand is why Netzel are asking for a loan, which I understand is a loan and not asking for a grant, but when they already have quite a lot of money already.
Mm-hmm. So the proposed cost of what they're looking to build, which is the 10-court facility, along with sort of office space, which would be in a mezzanine floor type scenario, is estimated to be 20 million. And obviously that's quite a lot for these groups to raise, so this loan forms part of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions on this one? No, Jake. Happy to move it. Yeah, we might do these completely separately. So Jake and Tim, happy to move and second resolutions 1 and 2. I then might just put those first and then we'll move to the other one. All those in any debate? No. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Yeah. Melanie? Aaron?
I'll abstain from this.
Okay.
Thanks.
No, I'm
okay,
definitely for this.
Yes. Okay. And yes from Aaron. Okay, I declare that carried. Thank you very much. Right, so we'll move to the Food Resilience Network cold shell phase of the Otakura Orchard. Tim's happy to move. And Mike's happy to second, and Sam's got a question.
Look, I just wonder if you can talk me through, reading through it, the concern that you guys seem to have quite rightly highlighted is the ability to repay it. So can you talk me through how you've got to a point where you've got to a recommendation of this, and if there's a comfort level over whether this is in fact a grant or a loan long term?
Sure. There's always some uncertainty with loans, of course. The group is able to provide a level of security, although it is a community facility. Its value is a great deal more than $150,000. And so that is one path to repayment. Also, the group's done a lot of work in the last 12 months around its governance, leadership, and general, I guess, direction, which gives us a bit more surety that they're going to be able to put the things in place to introduce enough revenue through some hire of this facility over time. And they do have a significant wide base of support which for possible philanthropic work, which isn't traditionally how we like to get our loans repaid, but that's part of their plan to repay that over time.
So,
through ongoing philanthropic support.
So we're saying that the ability to repay will be conditional on grants from other organisations.
That's part of their plan to repay. Yeah.
Okay.
So not necessarily grants, but philanthropic sponsorship, etc. From the business community in that area.
Right, and so we're comfortable with that. Well, the other thing I was trying to understand, and look, I may have missed in the report, is so the level of security, like the recommendation says, over the facility or equivalent instrument. What would the? Is it literally buildings, or what's the? Because I mean, I guess where I'm going with it is, are we going to get 7 years down the line and then say they can't repay it? We have a security over their building, but in reality, we're not going to shut them down, are we?
That's part of the issue we've faced with some of the community loans when they come to this point. So far in the history of the community loan stream, we've been able to keep working with organisations, as we did last month by resetting some of the loan terms so that over time they're still covering the interest costs and eventually paying the loan off. So it would probably if they were struggling for repayment, it could play out in that type of manner. But council would have choices. Yeah.
So just one last one, Sarah. So then, is it appropriate that it goes through a loan scheme? Should it not be considered in another pot for a grant? I mean, I just don't have any comfort that we're going to get that money back.
Right. Oh, well, I mean, that's a decision for yourselves to make.
Let me put it. So the process in which it's got to this point, did they apply for a loan? Did we talk to them about going down a grant avenue, recognising it may even be less?
So they applied for a loan. I'm not familiar with a grant pool which they would be eligible to this type of level, and there's some urgency around this in terms of the state that the facility is in, and the desire to get it to cold shell, and in the absence of other grant funding pools, they've applied for a loan and believe they can repay it.
Sam, can I check? Are you interested in the potential for switching this to some sort of grant? And would you be comfortable with us if we approved this today, and then looked at the grant scheme and whether that could just repay ourselves, if you like, through
what I'm more interested in, and sorry, I don't want to take up much time, but even just in Sam's comments, then they're comfortable in their ability to repay. What I want to know, and what's not in the report, is our comfort over whether they can repay it, which isn't there.
Yeah.
So look, I'm happy. I might be a minority, and it's fine. But
okay.
I just think it's a bit of a problem.
Pauline.
Yeah.
Well, just on that, the 770 odd thousand that's listed in here as donations, is that philanthropic? It's not other community or not other funding organisations that have funded, because you've got, I think you've got Rata listed there, but the 777 is just donations.
I believe that's a combination of fundraising and philanthropic type donations. It's not from grant organisations.
Yes, so that does prove that they do have a reach and they can actually attract that sort of philanthropic funding. And I guess that's where you come from in feeling secure that they can pay this back. They can meet the repayments.
Yeah. And I guess one of the things is they chose to ask for a loan so that they could pay it back rather than choosing to ask for a grant.
Yes.
I think we have to be careful as staff saying we feel secure. Of course we can see there's an aspect of risk in these loan
Not-for-profit, I mean, it's always going to be.
And we try and provide you with some good information on the level of that risk, and really it falls to yourselves to decide whether to go ahead with that. But we felt that the 150 recommendation was balancing the risk versus the benefit and the hope for repayment.
Thank you, that's the answer I was looking for.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, so we've got a mover and a seconder for this one. Do we have any debate? Sam?
Really quickly, look, I won't be supporting it, and it's really around that ability to repay. I'm not saying they shouldn't be entitled to some form of money, but I think if we are looking at this stuff and we can't get a high degree of confidence over that ability to repay, we should be looking at how we triage that through other mechanisms within the organisation. So I can't support it today knowing it's a loan, because let's be very clear to the ratepayers of the city that in time this will effectively become a grant. And so I can't. Yeah.
No, sorry, Sam.
Oh.
Yeah. Pauline and then Leanne. Sorry.
Yeah, look, I'm supportive of this today. This is a response from the Share an Idea, as it says in the report, to establish a community garden in the north frame of the Avon River. This is a community-led anchor project. Look, we've got to get in behind and support this. I'm confident they'll be able to pay it back. There's a good bunch of people behind this, and I think it's going to be an incredible asset to our city with the orchard in there, all the food growing, and it's going to be an educational hub. 150,000 loan towards this is minimal. I believe that they will pay it off. I think there's going to be an incredible buzz around this place, so I'll be supporting it today, and I can't wait for it to be finished.
Thanks, Deanne.
Yeah, I think this organisation has demonstrated its capacity to fundraise in a way social enterprises do, using the internet. I own a little tree in their community garden, and it's a feijoa tree because I happen to like feijoas. But the concept of food resilience really does take us into the 21st century. It is something, we're the Garden City. What that means in the 21st century is quite different from what it meant. It's not just about the flowers and the parks and the gardens. It's actually about food resilience. That is our future. And food security is a global issue, and having neighbourhood generated support, and this orchard has been supported by Otakaro, so it's had government support as well, but the amount of community support is highly significant, and I know that if they got into the position where they couldn't repay the funds, they would simply ask the thousands of Christchurch residents and other New Zealanders who want to see it succeed. So I'm very confident in its capacity to repay.
Thank you. Melanie, then Tim.
For this, I believe that there's a lot of good points that are in the decision matrix to support it. Even though there is some risk, there are a collaboration of over 50 local organisations. It fits with our draft climate change strategy, which is one of our strategic, priorities for council. It also fits with our Edible and Sustainable Garden Awards. I mean, we all know this, so I'm happy for this one to accept the risk.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thank you. I think this does fit and tick a lot of boxes. And with looking at the calibre of the trustees, etc., and those connected with it, I don't have any concerns about the payback. They're highly skilled, respected individuals in the city who have great contacts, and if anyone can get some philanthropic and support, etc., I'm sure they can. So I haven't got a problem with this at all. It's just a shame that the interest on the $150,000 loan won't even be enough to cover the maintenance on the pool sculpture.
Thank you very much. Any further debate? No? Okay, and with that, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Just Sam. I could declare that carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so next we're going to move to the Metropolitan Discretionary Response Fund. Thank you very much. So we have a series of different applications here, and just a quick reminder that we did add some additional funding to this before this year due to the COVID response and the annual plan. So Mike Davidson's moving the whole lot. Do we have a seconder? Tim? Yep, that's okay. We'll just do that and we'll move to questions. If we've got those people, okay, that's fine. Right, so questions? Andrew.
Thank you. The Arts Centre. Clearly there's a far bigger conversation needs to be had with the Arts Centre around strategic approach to future sustainable funding and some quite big challenges that are ahead of that organisation. I would have preferred, I think it's fair to say, to have taken a joined up approach. Did you consider wrapping this 150,000 that's recommended here into that bigger conversation, or can you articulate the good reasons why we would look at dealing with this separately today?
I'll give that a go. So back in August, this committee established a much larger discretionary response fund than previous years in recognition of the impacts of COVID-19 and the economic aspects of that on community organisations, knowing that there was going to be uncertainty, there were going to be organisations who were impacted on a number of levels, including through loss of revenue, and the council wanted funds available to support those organisations as those things came to light. The Arts Centre didn't apply to the Strengthening Communities Fund and it came in through the Discretionary Response Fund, and so that's how they've fitted from an eligibility point of view, as a starting point. And there are a number of other discussions going on, but it felt appropriate for us to process their application and bring it to you in a timely manner for consideration. Cody, did you want to add anything just about Arts Centre sort of in general?
No, I mean, we're certainly aware that the Arts Centre were interested in having a longer term conversation and see that as an important conversation to be having, and this is a measure to address the current situation.
So the recommendation today really is looking at this as a holding position pending those bigger discussions, without preempting the way that any of that might go that we need to have as part of the LTP development. But this 150 is your recommendation around what needs to happen as a holding pattern.
Yeah.
To fill the gap between now and those longer decisions being made, whatever they be.
Yeah, and there's been no change in their funding position that would affect this since this application been processed and the decision today?
There has been one change since the details of this were written for the report, and that was that the Arts Centre were a recipient of the, well, you know the name of it.
Oh, it's just gone
The STAT Fund, Tourism Protection Fund that a number of tourism organisations receive, including Aronga Park. And they received $500,000, so that's to cover 2 years, to support them over 2 years, for covering things such as maintaining some staffing levels, general maintenance, cost of insurance, and program and activities. Now, Arts Centre's costs are higher than $500,000 over 2 years, and so them receiving that grant doesn't make them eligible for this, but obviously it improves their position from when they applied.
So have you considered whether that would change the recommendation for the 150? And, is there a change to that recommendation in the light of the information you've just provided? Or do you still believe that the recommendation for 150 is correct?
I think they still have need. Obviously, the longer term is a discussion to be had, because I think their need is going to not diminish over the years.
So the recommendation for 150 still stands, notwithstanding that further operational grant in the meantime?
We believe so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Melanie?
I've got a different question about the trolley bus system. Can I ask that?
Sure.
So, when you read the staff assessment, it seems like they've, the Historical Society is very much needing the funding to get the tramway going. Yet it's not recommended, and there's sort of no explanation for why.
So the initial report written by staff goes through a staff panel before it's delivered here. So it was essentially, the recommendation was based in the staff panel around the fact that in terms of the draw card to Ferrymead Park, which is where it's situated, that already with trains and trams operating at the site, that the priority of this fund to this particular group might not have the benefit of some other discretionary response applicants.
Additionally, the panel felt that while it was a worthy cause, it didn't quite fit with the aforementioned priority of this established DRF around things that have come up out of the blue and needs responding to. This was more of a planned type approach, so there might in time be other grant funds that might be more appropriate. But that decision ultimately lies with yourselves.
Thank you. Pauline?
Yeah, I'm on that one as well. But I read the report as saying that this is in a response to new electrical safety standards, which actually currently prevent them from running. So surely that would fit the criteria for a discretionary response application?
Oh, it meets the criteria. It's just how well it aligns, and that the panel's feeling was there might be other projects that align more closely, but again, it falls to yourselves to make that ultimate decision.
Because currently they can't operate until they do this work.
Correct.
Pauline, are you looking at changing? Are you looking?
Yes,
at...
I'd like to support this application.
Okay, so what value would you like to?
What they applied for, 22,000.
So the whole amount.
Yep.
Okay. And Jake, you said that you were looking at a potential amendment too. Was that on the same one?
No, possibly but I'll wait Anne's question before I...
Okay, right, Anne.
My question is here about the submission funding. So, just to clarify, so you said that the request budget cost, is that in an ideal world, that would be the amount of money that they would love to see if they to keep going the way they are?
That is the total cost of them to be able to deliver the service is 130,000.
Right.
Yep.
And is that one worker or two?
So previously they've had 2 workers. They now have 1 worker, and this is all a realignment, I guess, within the mission around priority. However, the reason I've backed it for 100% of what they've asked for is I believe it is still a very high priority. And if timing had been different, then they may have applied for more. But at the moment they have 1 staff, hence it's less than last year.
So if they were to be given more, they might be able to put another staff member on now.
Yeah, problem is they requested 75 and we can't give them more than they request. So last year there was actually an added part to the program, and they were looking at a red zone program to take street people out during the day and look at projects through red zone and everything else going on. That's been held, so they've decided not to apply for that this year, but that would be a future program that we're looking at to partner with them on.
Okay. One last question, if I may. Yep, thanks. I just wanted to say thanks, Gary. I know you've done an amazing work behind the scenes to get all this information and to work with them. Given the fact that we know there's going to be more need coming forward with the economic situation, and we're probably already seeing that in terms of numbers, and the fact that it has been an incredibly successful program in terms of dealing, is there any other, and we can only give them what they've asked for, are there any other places that we can go to help them with funding?
So they seem reasonably sure of other funders themselves, and so they're very grateful for what they've got from council at the moment, and other funders are definitely what they're looking at. Now things have changed and the situation has changed, and I believe you're right. I think there'll be more of a need. I'd expect that they will start to look at other options.
Continue working with them in
Absolutely.
terms of how we can continue to support?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Tim, then Jake.
Thank you. I guess following on from what you've said with regards to other organisations and the economic situation we're in, so going with your recommended amounts, the amount remaining in the fund is 561,000, just over, if that's going with your recommendations.
So prior to this meeting, the balance is 561,000.
So with your recommendations,
with the recommendations, the balance would drop to 266,000.
yeah, and we're unaware of the other organisations that may be needing and requiring and coming to us. So if we wanted to up this, that could then be detrimental to other organisations that kind of will need and may need support in the future.
Correct. It's the crystal ball part
Yep,
of this role
absolutely.
of just being
Yep.
unknown.
Yep.
Yeah.
But all these organisations, as you said, along with using the city mission, they do have ability to approach other funders.
Absolutely.
And so maybe that would stimulate other organisations to supporting these groups rather than always being the council.
Yeah, and I think as a statement, we've started to develop a lot better networking with other funders. And so in terms of being able to go to other funders and support on behalf, we're starting to be more effective there as well.
In fact, just on that, by way of example, one of the applications which hasn't been discussed yet but is sitting there, which is Cultivate Christchurch, that's exactly how that played out. One meeting with the applicant, with 4 funders in the room, all hearing what their plans and situation and predicaments or goals were, and all identifying funds that might be suitable and how we can all pitch in together, pending the decision of our decision makers to help them achieve their goals. And that's exactly how that played out.
Great, that's
so we're
really
just one of 4 funders.
It's an interesting way to go forward. It's excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Just looking at the NZPC funding, how come the amount recommended was lower than the amount requested?
Yeah, so they've received funding through council previously in the Capital Endowment Fund, and the intention of that grant was primarily around concerns raised by the councillors in regards to street workers operating north of Billy Ave into the St Albans area, and so that was intended to be a one-off grant, and that position that was created for that has continued her work to great success. We haven't had any complaints of workers north of there, but have applied back for a similar amount as they previously received.
I think in answer to the number, to match fund the government, the MOH is at 13,000, and we felt it was fair for local government to match that. And again, organisations to consider other funding options within the city.
So just what would be the consequences of the $26,000 reduction? Well, it's not a reduction because it hasn't been granted, but
the previous grant was back in 2018, so the position has continued to operate without council funding over the previous financial year, but it would be tied into the ability, because the Ministry of Health funding is tagged to sexual health objectives, providing of sanitary products, etc. Council funding in the past has gone towards the more social outcomes in terms of antisocial behaviour, violence on the streets, reducing tensions.
And a general comment, if I may, that grants towards wages tend to help tie that organisation to maintain its staff over a certain time frame, and depending on the size of that means how quickly they either have to go out and apply for further grant money or when the position has to be ended. So that's usually the impact of the size of these types of grants on wages, is the time it buys them before the cash flow hits and they need to go out to other funders.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions? No, so at this point, Yanni?
Just in regards to the Arts Centre, I mean, I'm just trying to understand when we have that closer look, and particularly around the level of staffing. I know we've had some information about what reductions they've made, but have you done a sort of assessment about the kind of staffing costs and the staffing remuneration? You know, looking at the financial statements, it seems like it's gone up quite considerably over the last few years. And I guess I was just concerned that we have a look at what we're actually funding as much as the quantum.
So we don't usually have an open book relationship with community organisations where we drill down to that level of specifics. We're just one funder, and we haven't been funding the Arts Centre for a number of years. So once we receive an application, we take a good look at what's going on. But these guys haven't applied for wages; they've applied for insurance and you know the list that's there, and keeping the kind of the lights on. Katie, did you want to add anything about kind of the staffing?
Oh, no, I think you've summed it up.
Okay. So, as Councillor Turner alluded to, larger conversations could be valuable, and if they're at a higher strategic level than a funding application, then they may be able to dive into things like this. But we were satisfied in terms of the efforts they were making in this time frame and the previous, period around reducing their costs, as we would expect. groups to do when they're coming in for money, to look at, well, what can you do before, alongside grants from council.
I think it's an appropriate question to ask at the next phase, Councillor. I do think if we look at what they've asked for, wages does not appear there, so we wouldn't have drilled or felt the need to get into it. We justify what they've asked for, but at the next phase, when they're here to discuss ongoing funding, I think that's a very valid point to be asking.
So, yeah, I know you've sent through the financial statements, and there's been some net surpluses in the last 2 financial years of, quite considerable quantums. I guess what I'm struggling with is, especially when they've got the COVID money, why they've still got this need.
So
because we heard from them last time, and we were going to do it through the LTP. That was kind of what I thought when they came to council previously.
I think some of the information that you've been asking for was in the information that was sent through by them on Tuesday. It's now up on the hub.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Well,
And so you have to be careful when staff are being asked to do stuff across stuff, that the detail sits with the organisation. So answer what you can, but we've also been sent some significant amounts of information by the organisation.
I guess I just want to talk to the surpluses. With an organisation that owns significant assets and their buildings are valued at close to $400 million, a small change in a revaluation of an asset can spike the eventual profit at the line, but it doesn't necessarily relate to cash flow, or it sometimes can even make cash flow more challenging because now you're insuring at a higher price, etc. So it is relevant, and we looked fairly closely at those finances and that sort of money they're making, but they're not returning surpluses from programs or operational activities. In fact, COVID had a negative impact on their operational revenue from hiring to the tune of about 300,000. So we were looking at that more than the line that you see there, which is their profit for the year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fine. And so just to be clear, so we haven't looked at the reason why their staff costs have increased dramatically over the last few years as part of the assessment?
We've been clear, and we heard before that actually in recent times, not the last couple of years, but just very recently this year, they've actually cut their staffing costs by 30%.
Well, I know, but they've doubled in about the last 5-6 years. It's quite considerable. So
no, we haven't. Well, I haven't analysed that increase over the past years. We were more focused on the current situation.
They need more staff to carry. Yeah. Okay, so we can get that information through for the next stage as well, and I think there'll be a significant amount of information for the next phase when those the ongoing funding requests come through. Are there any further questions? Melanie, then Jimmy.
Sorry to ask another question, but it's about the trolley bus system again. Those other sources of funding, what years are they from?
The ones listed on the matrix are all for the current financial year, I believe.
So that would be almost enough to cover that total cost by the looks of things. Like, is it for other projects?
There's a lot of different elements in the overall repair of the trolley buses. They've come to us specifically for the electrical poles aspect of that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Jimmy.
Yeah. I also ask this one, the trolley buses. How many days? Because there has been EEs, but right now they are trying to, on event days for the heavy part. How many days for those event days?
Usually
per year.
Per year, they roughly run about one major event a month on the Steam Sundays, but they're changing up their schedules currently with kind of a rethink of how Ferrymead runs their events in general.
Okay.
So currently around 12 a year.
Okay. But if they are not the replacement of those traction supports, whether it's a bigger risk for passenger or not?
They won't be running.
Be able to operate.
They won't.
Yeah. Okay. So we're at the stage where we've got potential amendments for a couple of them. So Pauline is keen to see some amount for the trolley buses. Are you keen to have the full amount, noting that we don't normally give full amounts for these things? And do you want to test that with the room?
All right, in light of the the guidance from the chair, I would propose 15,000.
Okay.
Oh, Aaron's got a question, I think. Or
Aaron?
is he seconding it?
Well, just to clarify, the requested budget is, the total cost is 45. They've requested half of that, which is 22.7. So they haven't requested the full amount for the project.
Yep, that's right.
There.
Yep. Okay,
So-
Pauline are you keen for that to be higher, Aaron?
Well, just the requested amount of half the project of 22.7. I mean, what's the point in having a heritage asset sitting out in Ferrymead that the city can't use? Because
You're in debate.
you can't. That was a question. What's the point in having a heritage asset?
Okay, so thank you. So, so it looks like there's a move to have some funding on there. So I'll initially ask.
I've moved 15. I just need a seconder.
Okay, so
basically.
initially I'll say for the mover and seconder of the whole thing, are you happy to have 15,000 included? No. Okay, so it will be an amendment. Do I have a seconder for 15,000 for the trolley buses? Melanie?
Yeah.
Oh, Aaron. Okay, we'll do Aaron on that one. Okay. So in that case, we'll do that one first. Is there any debate on the amendment of $15,000 for the trolley bus system restoration? Pauline?
Look, I'd really seek support to support this because you know they do run on oily rag. We know they're down there, but this is Ferrymead is an incredible asset to our city and becoming more and more so as historical items obviously get older and more interesting. And what these guys do when they're actually repairing these things, their workshops open for people to go in and have a look and learn. They get a lot of children through there, they get a lot of people through, and currently these things cannot run because of a change in electrical standards, and I think to give them a hand would be a really prudent use of some of this money. It'll still leave $247,000 in the pot, rounding off the numbers, so I do seek your support for this, for Ferrymead.
Thank you. Any further debate? No, in that case, I will put the amendment. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Aye. Okay, can we have a show of hands for no? 1, 2, 3, 4. I declare that carried. Would you guys like your votes recorded there? Okay, so Anne, Tim, Sam and Mike. And we'll move to Councillor McClellan's proposed amendment. So you're going for the full amount for NZPC? Okay, do you have a seconder for that? Anne? Okay, is there any debate on this one?
Yeah, I'll open it up and just say that I think that this is obviously really, really important work that we should be trying to support as much as possible. And if this extra bit of funding means that the work of this outreach worker can continue for a longer period of time, or mean less funding applications to this organisation, I think that's a good thing. I know firsthand how much of a difference this outreach coordinator has made, and how much this organisation struggles with even basic costs like text message alert systems to warn workers when there's dodgy clients hanging around. And I think that there's a lot that we haven't, that there's a lot more we should be doing in terms of looking after our street workers, and that we could be doing into the future. And this is kind of the least we could be doing in this city, especially given our track record.
Thank you very much. Any further debate, Anne?
Just that I feel proud of our city and the way that we actually do really support our most vulnerable, and I can't think of any more vulnerable population than some of these women, and I think that we, as Jake has said, anything that we can give will create a safer community for them and for the wider community, and it fits and networks and connects to the overall work that the City Mission is doing, for example. It's all part of a big picture. So it's about caring for our most vulnerable. So I will be supporting the amendment.
Thank you very much. Any further debate? Councillor Davidson?
Just quickly, and I guess this is
looking at the overall applications we have in front of us, then actually the amount we have in this pot is limited. And the problem is that, you know, if we spend it all when we get these applications, we could, you know, halfway through the year and the whole fund's exhausted. That's not a good outcome. And I think we see this time and time again when near the start of the financial year, when we get these applications coming to us, we quickly try and increase everything and don't realise the outcome of that is actually there'll be groups that will miss out later in the year. Look, I would love to have given more money to all these groups who are asking for it, but we only have a limited amount of funds in this pot, and that's why I'll be saying no to this.
Thank you. Pauline?
Thank you. Look, this is a great project and it's proven that it has worked. We had nothing but big trouble a couple of years ago. This is obviously working. My issue with this is the amount. I think it's a huge jump from the staff recommendation of 13. It's also pretty unbalanced as the contribution, which I saw as a fund match from the Ministry of Health. So if this doesn't pass, can I foreshadow a foreshadowed motion to, or I'll ask the mover to reduce the amount to a more realistic, palatable figure, because I think I support what Mike Davidson said, that we do have to be careful there's enough in the fund to spin out for the rest of the year. And I think that, I would personally like to see 25.
Okay, so we're at the point now where, I'll get to you next, Melanie, where, Pauline, you're not able to foreshadow a future amendment because you've already moved one. And so you won't be able to do that, I'm afraid. Yeah, Melanie?
Well, I agree with Pauline. I'd go 26,000. So I'll foreshadow a motion there.
Okay, thank you. So should this one fail, there'll be a further amendment for a different amount. Okay. Any further debate? Tim?
Yeah, we have funding agreements with other parties with regards to some things, this one being one of them. I'm just wondering if we suddenly go up, you know, how does that affect it? I mean, I'm happy with the staff recommendation and I think we should stick with it for a number of reasons, but you know, we don't know what's around the corner, and it could be something that is really as its need as this, and if the bucket's empty, you know, we've got a responsibility to all ratepayers of Christchurch. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we've got Andrew and then Jake.
Thank you. I do support this, and I'll signal I'll be supporting this, and if this doesn't pass, then I'll support the foreshadowed amount. We are almost a third of the way through the financial year, and I'd prefer to get these funds out there so that they can start to have positive benefit to our communities. And I do really think that this project is one where supporting now to a greater degree will actually avoid problems that we almost inevitably would have a role in helping to solve later.
Thank you. Jake?
Yeah, following actually nicely on from what Andrew was going to say, let's be honest, we're going to fund this organisation lots over you know, its existence. And actually what we're doing is front loading a contribution that council is going to make otherwise anyway. Much better to front load our contribution, actually cut down on some of the red tape for the organisation, and actually I find it a little bit I don't know, I find it a bit cynical that people are happy to spend $150,000 on the arts centre like that and want to quabble over $26,000 for something like this.
Okay, Yanni, that was Jake's wind up. Sorry.
No, you didn't ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Right, and with that, I will put the amendment that is for $40,099.
No, it's fine.
Has Aaron only just done it? Because that was Jake's right of reply.
Just did it. Yep. You only
And
just put
sorry,
it
that was Jake winding up because he'd spoken.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so with that, I will put the amendment. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
No.
Okay, hands up.
No.
Hands up, Aaron, so you were a no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I declare that carried. That's right. 6. Division? Okay.
Councillor Templeton.
Aye.
Councillor McFarlane. Aye. Councillor McDonald. No. Councillor Johansson?
Yes.
Councillor Galloway?
Yes.
Councillor Daniels?
No.
Councillor Coker?
Was it me? It's just a leader, Joe.
Shh, next.
Councillor Chin?
Yes.
The Mayor?
Yes.
Councillor Sandra?
No.
Councillor Kewen?
No.
Councillor Davidson?
No.
Councillor Cotter?
No.
Councillor Turner?
Yes.
That's 9 in favour and 5 against.
Thank
Two
you. I
extra
declare that
votes.
carried. Okay, so we now move to the substantive. We've got 2 amendments that have come through. So I'm just checking that the mover and seconder of the substantive, so that's Councillors Davidson and Scandrett, are you still happy to be the mover and seconder with the amendments through? Yeah, great. Okay, do we have any debate on the substantive? Andrew?
Thank you. It's notable that the project title for the Arts Centre application is Keep the Arts Centre Open. And I think, the risk that the Arts Centre might close is something that we need to have significant regard to. It's a significant asset in our city, and it's got a significant role to play in the life of our city as well. So closure of the Arts Centre isn't an acceptable outcome, and I was very pleased with the answers to the questions that I asked earlier. That shows that what we are essentially doing is supporting a sustainable holding pattern to give us a bit of breathing space to have some of those bigger discussions that we need to have as we go through the development of the LTP. And, they are separate discussions than the decision that we're making today. And I certainly don't want to preempt the nature or the outcome of that conversation or what the approach might be. And, of course, there are a number of different approaches that we could take as we work through some of the longer-term issues that have been well canvassed in the media and with us around the Arts Centre and its future sustainability. I think we need to consider that in the context of other heritage facilities that also have a life to play in the life of the city, and a really balanced approach across a number of different, additional, and quite possibly competing needs. But as long as we're going into that with our eyes open, I just wouldn't want today's decision to be seen as preempting any particular approach to the Arts Centre as we move into those discussions that I'm very keen to have as positively as we possibly can. I'll just make a comment on insurance. It came up in the questions a couple of times. You would think logically that as you repair a building and you strengthen it and therefore you make it less likely to be subject to an insurance claim, that the insurance liability would decrease rather than increasing. And that certainly signals one of the areas that we'll be very keen to focus on as we have those future discussions. But I just wanted to comment further, particularly given the answers to questions earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Pauline?
Just quickly, look, I'm sure we all recognise the difficulty and the challenges in administering and divvying up this fund, so I want to recognise the work staff have put in, and also being tolerant to our questions and our changes to your recommendations. So thank you for that. And also in the light of the Prostitutes Collective application, in my debate I did say this is a successful program, it's working for our city, it's taken a lot of angst away from everybody. I do support it, I just wanted a slightly reduced amount because considering what the balance of the pot is, but also the fact that now that project has been 100% funded, more from the City Council than the Ministry of Health, it would be good to get a message back to them that if we did start this off as a partnership, that they may come forward with perhaps a counterbalance in their share next time. So if you could manage that, I think that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yanni?
Thank you. I'll just ask that you put the Arts Centre one separately. I'm going to abstain on that. I think we actually need more information. Having had a look at the financial statements, I would much rather take a partnership approach and look at some of the changes that we need to make going forward to get it on a more sustainable footing. I don't think just giving the grant at this stage without some commitment to some of the and understanding of the other issues is appropriate. So I'm going to abstain on the Arts Centre. I just wanted to talk on the outreach ones, both the city mission and the street worker, the street outreach coordinator. You know, I think this is one of the most cost-effective solutions we have as a city to reducing the costs on our society. And I still recall as a young person in the city when 2 young people were murdered in a short space of time, and there was a march down Colombo Street with the young people of the city asking for help and support. And at that time, and there'll be staff members that are here today that remember, council decided to fund some street workers to work with those young people. And in that time, it actually had an amazing impact. And some of these and so I want to acknowledge that actually funding people to work alongside communities that are at risk is a very small investment for the harm that it reduces and for the impact it makes on the safety and well-being of so many of our most vulnerable. So I'm really proud of the council in supporting these grants today. I believe this is a very good investment and it will pay us back in untold ways around the safety and the well-being of so many people that we often sometimes don't see, and people that actually need the support. So, you know, I just wanted to acknowledge that because this is something the city has had proud legacy of supporting in the past, and I think it's important that we support it going forward.
Thank you, Anne.
Continuing on from Yanni's comments, I think the benefit to the business community, for example, in terms of the work that's being done in the inner city with those on the who find themselves on the street. Recently, or not that long ago, I was getting lots of emails, and I'm sure others have, from business owners who are concerned about those sitting outside their premises, and it does have an impact. And so the money and the resource that we put into that doesn't just benefit the people who really need it, but it has a lovely outflowing effect. So when you look at what we're supporting here, it's a real snapshot actually of the city and its needs, and I think it reflects really well a good use of money to provide to ensure a city that is vibrant both in its heart and in its soul. And I think I feel really proud of what we've done here today. So thank you.
Any further debate? Aaron? Yep. Aaron?
Yeah, it's no doubt we're a city that cares, but when I look at this list and what this money goes to, and this pot will run out, Councillors Davidson and Cotter clearly spout that out, and they are correct, that will come home to roost. A number of these grants today should be falling with central government. When you have people that live on the streets, begging on the streets, or sex workers on the street being murdered, you've got a government that's failed. And it doesn't matter who's in power. I'm not pointing the finger that way. These are central government responsibilities to make the people of your city safe and to have an inclusive society. And in our city, it keeps going back on the ratepayer, and it should be central government. That's what taxes are for. So we've got a new government now. Let's have some good conversations with them to try and solve some of these problems going forward, because our city isn't as inclusive as it should be, and there's a lot of work to be done. But our coffers are not very deep, and theirs are a lot deeper. Well, they were last month.
Thank you. Any further debate? Okay, in that case, I will put number 2 first. All those that's the Arts Centre. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? And 1 abstention from Yanni. And then I will put the rest of them. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you very much. Declare that carried. Well done, everyone. So we have one last very small paper. Correction to error in resolution, paper 12. So, sorry, I heard a move over. 1, 2. So Mike and James D. Okay. Any questions? Any debate? All those in favour? Any against? Okay, I declare that carried, and now we will close the meeting.
Do you have to move into public excluded for the minute?
No, we've done it.
Oh, have you? Oh,
yeah. Okay, after the meeting. Can we just be quiet for a second? So we're going to close with a karakia, and just before we do that, but I'd like to remind people that at 1:30 this afternoon we have a briefing just for 1 hour, and so that's been in your diaries. I know there's a couple of apologies already, but everyone else is expected to be here for that. So thank you. No, you just end up having a very long lunch because you're all so well behaved during the meeting today. What's that, sorry? Oh, sorry, your briefing workshop. That 1 hour period from 1:30 till 2:30 is a very quick briefing, and then the workshop on... I thought people were leaving anyway, those people. But that's fine. We'll close the meeting and then we will discuss how we could bring the workshop forward. Councillor Davidson.
Hikatia te rongo mai whiti o tēnei hui. Tukua kia ai, tukua kia oi. Ko ranganui ki runga, ko papa tuanuku ki raro, tuturu whakamo kia tina hui e takie.
Kia ora. Thank you. And with that, we'll declare the meeting closed. So Gary has called to see if we can get...